Well, this is night number 4, I think it is, of our feast of stealth shelters. And we had a lovely night last night. The weather was it was windy, but it wasn't windy, and it wasn't rainy, so it was actually quite delightful. Today I've got some lovely spaghetti, and I've got some baked beans, and I've got this leftover piece of meat that was from a hamburger, which I'm just going to break up into meatballs. So that is now going to be spaghetti and meatballs. Let's add some spaghetti to our meatballs. Yum, yum. So like I said, I've had actually a wonderful time. The first night it rained, the second night it blew and was cold, the third night it was fine, and tonight it's just very windy. So we'll survive. I'm sure. I can say that I'm extremely grateful for everything. Let's eat this with a fork, I think. That's quite nice, quite delicious. I'm not really a foodie, so to me everything's delicious. Here's a meatball. That was delicious. So spaghetti and meatballs. Now the other day I invited a friend to come over for lunch, and he phoned me the day before and he said he's sick. Shall we just move it to the next day and let's live by faith? So I thought, I don't think that's what living by faith means. So I moved it to about 5 days in advance, or 5 days later, and then he came over. But at least it got me thinking, what does it mean to live by faith? What exactly does living by faith entail? And that phrase is used about half a dozen times in the Old and New Testament. And generally it says the just shall live by faith. So living by faith is combined with the just. It's the just who live by faith. So let's tell you what living by faith. Now, I've thought about it. I'm pretty sure I know what it means. It doesn't mean taking your life savings and going and putting it on black on the roulette table and spinning the little ball and hoping that you double your net savings. That's not living by faith, that's living by chance. Or inviting someone sick over, that's living by chance too. So let's give you an example of what living by faith is. Since the creation, everything that's being just has lived by faith. Let's give you an example. God created the angels, and they were all perfectly created, including Lucifer. And for a while, they all lived by faith. They all were happy in heaven, and they were all just. They all trusted God. Then one day, Lucifer decided, I'd like to be like God. I'd like to be the one in charge. And he got together perhaps a third of the angels, and he said, this place, I know it's pretty good, but it's a bit restrictive. It's like coming to work every day. Let's all flee from heaven and go and live somewhere in the north by ourselves where we don't have to be subject to God every day. And so a third of the angels, they say, rebelled. And God sent Michael after them, and there was war in heaven. And God threw Lucifer, who is now called Satan, down to earth with the fallen angels, who are now called demons. So instead of having faith in God living in heaven, which is the place we all aspire to, and heaven was presumably pretty okay, they decided to have faith in Lucifer, who persuaded them to rebel. And this is the first point, number one, that faith, the just shall live by faith in God, not faith in Lucifer. And while people live by faith, trusting in God, they live. But because the angels are unjust, the demons will eventually, after the end of the millennium, be put to death. They'll be thrown into the lake of fire. So then we come to the creation of man. And in Eden, Adam and Eve are living by faith. When along comes Satan, he says, no, you'll be as gods, you'll be wise if you eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Up to that point, they were living by faith. And when they took of the fruit and lived by faith in Lucifer instead of faith in Satan, instead of faith in God, that day, as God had promised them, you shall surely die. They were condemned to eventually die. Maybe it took them 900 years, but they did. Adam and Eve are now dead. So they were no longer just, they were no longer living by faith, and they suffered the consequences, which was no longer to be alive. So when it says the just shall live, it means live eternally or immortally by faith. All just beings who live by faith will eventually be immortals. Human beings who live by faith shall be made immortal. And even immortals, angels who don't live by faith, says the soul that sins, it shall die. That includes even angels. So in the final end, only those people living by faith will be called just, and only the just shall live eternally. So that is what living by faith, the just shall live by faith, means. That people who put their faith in God will live, and they will only live as long as they have faith in God. So it's quite interesting how we live by faith, because nobody knows what's going to happen in heaven. No one knows. We have faith that in a good God, and that what will happen will be good. But we actually have no clue what will happen after the millennium. We know during the millennium we'll be serving as kings and priests under Christ. After the millennium, when the New Jerusalem comes down to earth, there'll be no more sea. The earth will be purged by fire. Probably there'll be no more mortal animals and plants left on earth. God's going to create a new heaven, new earth. Perhaps the whole universe will be wrapped up. And there will be no physical life perhaps left on earth. There'll be a new heaven, new earth. The sea will be disappeared. And God is finished with this experiment with mortal life. Perhaps the only thing that will now exist will be spirit beings made out of spirit. And this new universe, this new heavens and earth that God's going to create, may now be devoid of physical life. Maybe once the earth's purged by fire, it'll only be spirit beings who are able to survive that. And as I say, Lucifer and his demons, now Satan and his demons, will be destroyed in the lake of fire. And all that will be left on earth will be the just, who will live eternally by faith. So that is what I believe the just living by faith means. So, what a lovely meal. I'm enjoying this thoroughly. I threw up this booth, or tabernacle. It's a bit leafy, and that may get a bit irritating if the leaves tickle me. But I have to see. It's going to be a bit windy tonight, but I'll survive. I'll pump up my mattress. Last night I went to bed at about 8. I was really tired, woke up at about 3. Went to bed under the sign of Scorpio. Woke up under Orion. It was lovely seeing the stars again. It was a bit cold, so I went and made a fire. Yeah, so I think day 4 of our feast of 7 days of stealth camping.